You know, if Donald Trump works on the weekends, the least we can do is work on the weekends too, right? I've never been a big fan of weekends anyway. I feel like it's just a wasted offer. There's so much we could get accomplished on weekends if we didn't, not work weekends. And President Donald Trump's been working around the clock. He flew to Alaska. He sat down with Putin. He flew home from Alaska. He was on the phone the entire time. And yeah, I'll tell you what, man, the thing I hate more than traveling for business is sitting on the phone. And Donald Trump had to do both of those things, but that's what happens when you're the commander of the commander-in-chief, leader of the free world, and the president of peace, trying to negotiate a peace deal between two countries that just don't want a peace deal. That's what President Donald Trump did. But listen, we got a fantastic weekend update, SNL style, only probably funnier jokes. Thank you. And we're going to tell you everything you need to know about what happened, what went down in Anchorage yesterday for the Anchorage Accords between President Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. First things first, though, make sure you are subscribed to this channel. And if you're listening to this show and you're maybe you stumbled upon us for the very first time, welcome to Mark Kaye Saves the Republic. Don't let this be the first and last time you stumble upon us. And if you subscribe, if you set the notifications, if you let whatever platform you're currently watching or listening to, make sure you tell them I want this every time it comes available. And the best way, the easiest way to do that is to click the subscribe button or the notify button or the follow button, or there's some button. It looks like, you know the thing, to quote the late great Joe Biden. So President Donald Trump, he was on Air Force One a lot yesterday. He flew to Anchorage, Alaska. He did some meetings. He met with the press, and he flew back 3 a.m. They landed. 3 a.m. they landed back in D.C., and there's President Donald Trump. He's walking down the stairs. The Marines are there to meet him at the bottom of the steps, and he gets back in the beast. He gets back to the White House probably about like 3:30 a.m. after a very long day. He's still saluting everybody. He's still in good spirits, and he didn't get his ceasefire. They're working on a peace agreement. The press are still yelling at him. That's the thing about the press, man. They are always there yelling at the president. They're never not yelling at the president, yelling questions at the president, wanting to know things that they're not gonna find out. In fact, they yelled at Vladimir Putin too when they were on the ground in Anchorage, Alaska. President Putin came down and he walked the red carpet, and he stopped and he met with President Donald Trump, and they shook hands, and it was one of those tug-of-war handshakes. And then the press were yelling at Putin, and they wanted to know if you're gonna stop killing civilians. And Putin's like, I don't understand what you're saying, which is a lie. He understands 100%. He understands 100% what was going on. But President Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin meeting in Alaska. And oh, by the way, the people in Alaska were thrilled. I want you to think about Alaska for just a minute, because Alaska's way up there. It's sandwiched between Canada and Russia, right? It's sandwiched between two of the most tyrannical communist dictatorships we have, Canada and Russia. And right up there, you got Alaska. And Alaska is a state. It's the United States of America. It's home of Sarah Palin and other people. And I don't know, are there famous Alaskans other than Sarah Palin? Lisa Murkowski? I don't even want to talk about her. Kelly Chewbacca? I'm trying to think of any other famous Alaskans that I know, but I don't know of any at the moment. Anyway, but they're up there, but they don't get, they are, first of all, they're blood red there. They're not going to get they have like 3 electoral votes. Donald Trump doesn't campaign in Alaska. No one really campaigns in Alaska unless you're running for governor of Alaska or senator from Alaska. You don't really campaign in Alaska. So President Donald Trump, I don't even know if he's ever been to Alaska or the last time he's been to Alaska, but President Donald Trump, he went there. And the people were thrilled. It was reminiscent of during the campaign when the president would come into a city for some kind of rally, because for the folks in Alaska, for the folks in Anchorage, this was their big chance to see President Donald Trump.
We feel honored that we could come down and support President Trump. There are several Ukrainians here that live in Alaska. They're here to support him too.
That's a horrible audio. The microphone, there's nowhere near these guys, and the crowd behind is so loud, and the honking and the I'm a little bit of a microphone snob myself. I think audio is like I'm a big audio person. Audio is much more important than video, and I just wish everybody, if there's one thing I want my legacy to be, it's everyone should have a really solid quality microphone. Especially in this day and age. If you're going to be on the internet, if you're going to be on the news, especially, I want you to have a good, solid, quality microphone, because that's really That's really important. But Alaska was thrilled. They were thrilled to have President Donald Trump there. And Donald Trump put on a show. Donald Trump had Vladimir Putin land in Alaska, land in Anchorage at the airport, and walk down this very extensively long, like it was a long red carpet. I think he did that on purpose. He's like, I'm going to make this guy walk. And he trekked down this red carpet. And then they stood and they had the handshake tug of war and the press was yelling questions at him. Then they walked by all of these high-tech military aircraft. And then, this was my favorite part. Then Donald Trump had a B-2 bomber fly over. He did a flyover with a B-2 bomber just flew right over Vladimir Putin. Like it was like an NFL game. You know, like I felt like I was at the stadium, like the Jaguar Stadium, and I was watching the game, and the flyover comes after the national anthem. But Donald Trump trolls Vladimir Putin with a B-2 bomber, and Vladimir Putin's like, "What is that?" And Donald Trump's like, "Don't worry about it. That's just the bomber that destroyed Iran's entire nuclear arsenal and program in like 20 minutes." But anyway, welcome to Alaska, President Putin. Welcome to Alaska. But that's a troll, man. That's something that Donald Trump did as a show of force. And it's something that he wanted Vladimir Putin to be well aware of. He got off the plane. He walked by all of our planes. He saw the planes flying overhead. And Donald Trump said, look, we are a military powerhouse. And that's something that you need to remember. And he went into the meeting and he said, I'm gonna do my best. He said, I don't know if we're going to get a ceasefire. Donald Trump never said, in fact, let me play for you what Donald Trump said before the meeting. Before the meeting, President Donald Trump was asked, is there going to be a ceasefire? And he said, I don't even know. I don't even know if there's going to be a ceasefire. Where is that clip? I think I had that clip. What is, here it is.
You know, I don't know that we're going to get an immediate ceasefire, but I think it's going to come. See, I'm more interested in immediate peace deal, getting peace fast. And depending on what happens with my meeting, I'm going to be calling up President Zelensky and let's get him over to wherever we're going to meet. I don't know where we're going to have the second meeting, but we have an idea of 3 different locations. And we'll be including the possibility, because it would be by far the easiest, of staying in Alaska. You know, we have big flights and he has the same thing. We have a lot of planes going when the head of...
Yeah, he's got a lot of people in Alaska. He's got Marco Rubio and Scott Bessent, and the Russians brought in a whole bunch of business people. There are like hundreds of people in Alaska. And Donald Trump said we should just stay in Alaska, have a second meeting with Zelensky. That's not going to happen, though, because there was no ceasefire. There was no deal. Even Hillary Clinton, by the way, Brett Baer was interviewing Donald Trump on the way over. They were on Air Force One, and Hillary Clinton said, if Donald Trump can get this deal done, I'll nominate him for the Nobel Peace Prize.
In fact, did you see that Hillary Clinton yesterday said that if you got this deal done and not capitulate to Putin, that she would nominate you for the Nobel Peace Prize?
If President Trump were the architect of that, I'd nominate him for a Nobel Peace Prize.
Well, that was very nice. I may have to start liking her again.
Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. But also, it's not that easy a process. These are 2 countries that have been warring for centuries. The Ukraine, whether it's the Ukraine or when it was part of Russia, Ukraine and Russia have been battling it out for centuries. And they're not going to stop anytime soon. But Donald Trump said, look, we had a really good meeting. It was a productive meeting. He and Vladimir Putin came out and they met with the press afterward. They took no questions. Yeah, Donald Trump said we made some real great progress, but there's no deal until there's a deal, which is one of the most Donald Trump things that I think he's used that before, but it's definitely a Trumpism. And there's more to that statement than I think meets the eye.
There's no deal until there's a deal.
Yeah, there's no deal until there's a deal. So for those of you that think there's a deal, there's no deal till there's a deal. But he said, we've got some phone calls to make. And that's exactly what he did. He met with Vladimir Putin. They had a long meeting too. He said it was a good meeting. He met with Sean Hannity afterward. They had a little sit down and he and Sean Hannity went over, they kind of hashed out what happened and who said what. And Donald Trump said, look, it was a warm meeting.
The meeting was a very warm meeting. You know, he's a strong guy. He's tough as hell and all of that. But the meeting was a very warm meeting between 2 very important countries, and it's very good when they get along. I think we're pretty close to a deal. Now, look, Ukraine has to agree to it. Maybe they'll say no, because Biden handed out money like it was candy, and Europe gave him a lot of money. You know, we gave him $350 billion. Europe gave him much less, but still a lot, $100 billion.
That's like $500 billion. That's like $500 billion that they've been fighting with in Ukraine, and they're always still begging for more money. And Donald Trump, basically, it seems to me, and again, this is all just conjecture because I wasn't anywhere near Alaska. I've never been to Alaska. I wasn't invited to Alaska. I wasn't in the room where it happened. I have no idea what's going on with this particular meeting. But it seems to me like Vladimir Putin said, here's what I would do to end this war. And Donald Trump realized it was something that probably Vladimir Zelensky would not agree to. And so he got on the phone with Vladimir Zelensky, he got on the phone with NATO, he got on the phone with the European leaders, and he said, here's exactly what happened. And we're going to know the outcome of that. But it was a long meeting, too. 3 hours they sat and they talked and they discussed all various different levels of complex communication and complex issues that both of our countries are concerned with.
We were together almost 3 hours. And it was very extensive, and we agreed on a lot of points. I mean, a lot of points we're agreed on, but there's not that much. There's, 1 or 2 pretty significant items, but I think they can be reached. Now it's really up to President Zelensky to get it done. And I would also say the European nations, they have to get involved a little bit, but it's up to President Zelensky. I think we are, and if they'd like, I'll be at that next meeting. They're going to set up a meeting now between President Zelensky and President Putin. And myself, I guess, I didn't ask you about it. Not that I want to be there, but I want to make sure it gets done. And we have a pretty good chance of getting it done.
Now, Vladimir Putin and President Zelensky supposedly meeting. That's the next step. We do know that there is a meeting set for Monday with Vladimir Zelensky in the United States of America. He's coming back to the Oval Office. The big question is, will he be dressed appropriately? Because that's always a question. Whenever you have Zelensky coming to D.C., whenever you have Zelensky walking into a room, you're like, is he going to be in the fatigues? Is he going to be GI Zelensky? Is he going to be President Zelensky with the tie? We don't know. But Donald Trump wrote a great and very successful day in Alaska. The meeting with President Vladimir Putin of Russia went very well, as did a late-night phone call with President Zelensky of Ukraine and various European leaders, including the highly respected Secretary General of NATO. It was determined by all that the best way to end the horrific war between Russia and Ukraine is to go directly to a peace agreement, which would end the war, and not a mere ceasefire agreement, which oftentimes do not hold up. President Zelensky will be coming to D.C., the Oval Office, on Monday afternoon. If all works out, we will then schedule a meeting with President Putin. Potentially millions of people's lives will be saved. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So, the process now moves to whether or not President Zelensky is going to agree to the terms, whether or not President Zelensky is going to say, I want to end the war or I want to keep fighting. And it seems to me that what this meeting did was it set up this whole decision to rest with the people of Ukraine and to rest with Zelensky. And now it's going to be on Zelensky's shoulders whether or not he accepts whatever President Donald Trump and President Putin discussed yesterday. But President Donald Trump told Sean Hannity, we agreed on a lot of stuff.
We had a very good meeting today, but we'll see. I mean, it's, you have to get a deal. We agreed on a lot of points. I want to see people stop dying in Ukraine, and that's what's happening. We're losing 5, 6, 7,000. They're Russians, mostly Russians, and they're Ukrainian soldiers. There's some people dying in cities and towns where they're trying to blow up missile manufacturers and other things in some cities. I don't know if you know what's going on there, but there are a lot of people dying. And if we can end that war, it would be very good. And I was very happy to hear him say, if I was president, that war would have never happened.
Yeah, and that is something, and that is true. That is exactly something that Vladimir Putin said. In fact, Sean Hannity brought that up, which is, I mean, it's a feather in President Donald Trump's cap because President Donald Trump has been saying it literally since the war started.
At a press conference, the president of Russia stated something that you had stated many, many times, and maybe your political opponents might have dismissed. But he said this war would not have taken place if you were president. Now, he did give you behind the scenes specific reasons why it happened under Biden. He did give you reasons.
Yeah, he did, but I know the reason. It's gross incompetence. I mean, we have a border that's totally closed now, and people come in, but they come in legally. but we had zero, as you know. The first time you heard it was 3 months ago, but we've done it now 3 times in a row. 0 people coming in illegally. We have many things that are going well now. Our economy is great. We don't have inflation. The price of energy is down. The price of groceries are down. The price of everything is down. People are happy. We're saving Social Security. You saw that the other day, where we have a genius in charge. I took him out of J.P. Morgan Chase. He was the head of, one of the top people in there, and he did great. He went to one of the big funds. One of the top people. They take a cut. I think he said he's working for 1% of what he was working for. These are unbelievable people. And the job he's done in Social Security and making it really powerful and strong is amazing. And we've done that with many things. I love doing it. I love seeing this country be great again. And Vladimir said just a little while ago, he said, I've never seen anybody do so much so fast. He said, your country is like hot as a pistol. And a year ago, he thought it was dead. Everybody thought it was dead.
And that is the reason why he invaded. He flat out said it was because of Joe Biden. And he didn't get into the specifics, but we all know the specifics. We all know what happened. We all know that Joe Biden allowed this whole war in Ukraine. We all know that Joe Biden didn't have the gumption to stand up to Vladimir Putin and Russia. And we know that if it weren't for Joe Biden in office, that all these people that died probably would still be alive, that this war would never have been fought, and that the destruction and the death and the money and the expenditure of human life and everything else that's been going on, that would have never happened had President Donald Trump been in power this entire time. And that is true. And that is something that President Donald Trump continues to herald. And also Vladimir Putin now. Vladimir Putin is parroting that same thing. Now, so Donald Trump's like, look, he made some phone calls on the plane. He talked to everybody and he goes, we're going to try to figure out so President Donald Trump leaving the door open for another meeting, saying thank you to Vladimir Putin. And now we see where the next steps go. We have on Monday a meeting with President Donald Trump and Zelensky. That's coming up in the Oval Office, and that is happening very quickly. That's happening in the next couple of days. According to Fox News, there has been already some talk on the part of Vladimir Zelensky as to what he wants to happen, what he says needs to happen if there's going to be peace in Ukraine and peace in his country between him and Russia. So Fox News is reporting Zelensky outlines peace demands before high-stakes White House meeting with Trump. Ukrainian president also warned Russia may increase strikes to gain leverage as European leaders back peace push. All of those things could potentially be true. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky on Saturday outlined firm conditions for a real peace ahead of a high-stakes meeting with President Donald Trump on Monday. Zelensky posted to X his call with Trump and then European leaders after Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin met in Alaska to try to bring about an end to the 3.5 years war. The positions are clear. A real peace must be achieved, one that will be lasting, not just another pause between Russian invasions, Zelensky wrote. Killings must stop as soon as possible. The fire must cease both on the battlefield and in the sky, as well as against our port infrastructure. All Ukrainian prisoners of war and civilians must be released, and the children abducted by Russia must be returned. Zelensky wrote that thousands of Ukrainians remain in captivity and must all be released, while adding that pressure on Russia must be maintained while the aggression and occupation continue. In a follow-up post, Zelensky warned of Russian treachery that could lead to attacks in order to gain leverage amid ongoing negotiations. Based on the political and diplomatic situation around Ukraine and knowing Russia's treachery, we anticipate that in the coming days, the Russian army may try to increase pressure and strikes against Ukrainian positions in order to create more favorable political circumstances for talks with global actors, he wrote. Zelensky is scheduled to meet with Trump in the White House on Monday as the three nations try to bring an end to the bloodshed. And then they get into Trump's post. Though a peace agreement was not decided upon during the meeting on Friday, Trump described it as a successful meeting with a lot of progress made. Putin expressed similar sentiments, adding the summit was a constructive atmosphere of mutual respect. After his meeting with Putin, Trump also spoke to European leaders who said they back Trump's peace push, but insist Ukraine must have ironclad security guarantees to defend its sovereignty and territorial integrity. The European leaders did not address whether a peace deal was preferable to a ceasefire. So Monday is the next big day in the saga of Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, Volodymyr Zelensky, and Ukraine v. Russia. We're going to find out what happens in the meeting with Zelensky. We're going to find out what he agrees to, and we're going to see if there will, in fact, be a second meeting between Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, and potentially even with Vladimir Zelensky this time, so they get closer and closer to the peace deal. And the big question, really, the big question on everyone's mind is, will Hillary Clinton nominate Donald Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize? I mean, if this deal gets done, she swore that she would, although we all know her word's not really that great.
There's no deal until there's a deal.
Yeah, listen, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and any channel that you're watching us on. If you're watching the video on YouTube or Facebook or wherever you happen to be, thanks so much for tuning in. Subscribe so you can catch us live during the week, Monday through Friday, every single day at 1 p.m. Eastern time. We go live. We go live with all the updates, all the news, all the information you need to make sure that you are totally informed. Also, if you're listening on any of our podcast platforms, we appreciate you listening on our podcast platforms because, well, I mean, that's why we're there. We're there for you to listen, not for you to not listen. So if you're there, that's the whole goal of podcasting. I don't podcast to listen to myself talk. I hope to give you some kind of added benefit and bonus and exciting information. Keep in mind, speaking of exciting information, that on Wednesday of this week coming up, we have a fantastic live event going on Wednesday, August the 20th at 8 p.m. Eastern time. I'll be bringing you my Podcast Profits Pro event once again. And this is a fantastic event where I break down for you live in a Zoom call how I create my daily podcast, how I monetize my daily podcast, and most importantly, how you can create a podcast, whether it's daily or weekly or even monthly, to help benefit you and your business, how you can build your financial future and security and grow your customer base and grow your profits with your own podcast. Because when it comes to social media, there's nothing better than podcasting. And if you have a Facebook page, if you have an X account, if you have a LinkedIn, you definitely can and should have a podcast because it's easier, it's more fun, it gives you more credibility, more access, and more money in the long run than any of those other social media platforms. If you're interested in joining, go to podcastprofitspro.com, or just click the link in the description of this video. And like I said, don't forget to subscribe because we're going to be back at you before you know it. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, every single day we need to, because we want to make sure that you have the information you need. We want to make sure that you know who is coming at you, where your enemies are coming from, who your enemies are, who your friends are, who you can trust, who you should never trust. We want you to be totally entertained. We want you to be excited every single day and inspired to do whatever it takes to wake up and fight so we can save the Republic